And by 1959, work was finally underway, preparing the riverfront for construction of the Gateway Arch. But the decade would also bring the city something that would become a lasting symbol of misjudgment and failure, the Pruitt-Igoe Housing Project. And yet it too was the product of the same confidence and spirit of progress.
And we were very proud of those buildings when we built them. And when we saw people moving out of buildings that were rat infested and those families were moving into these new buildings, I was very, very happy for them.
Substandard housing, slums, they'd been considered a serious problem at the turn of the century, and now in the age of television and atomic power, there were people who were still using outhouses in the heart of St. Louis, living in buildings without central heat or hot running water. St. Louis's first government housing projects opened during World War II to replace rundown neighborhoods. On the near south side for whites was Clinton Peabody. Carr Square Village was built on the near north side for blacks.
Everyone that we talked to, a lot of the people that we talked to were some of the earliest residents. They lived there in the 40s and the 50s when it first was constructed. And they felt that they were moving into a place that was a showplace of St. Louis. Most of the families they described as working families, two-parent families. It didn't have the stigma, I think, that it has today.
In the 1950s, new public housing became a top priority. The biggest project of all was Pruitt-Igoe on the north side, 33 buildings, each 11 stories tall, segregated by race. Architects praised their modern design, but others worried about concentrating so many poor families into one area. When the buildings were integrated, most of the whites moved out, and many of the poor who were supposed to use this as just the first step out of poverty never got any further. The maintenance and management and crime problems at Pruitt-Igoe would become so great that 20 years later, housing officials simply gave up.
I was there when Pruitt-Igoe was still, had its foundations being poured. You know, and I think I put it in one of my movies, this is the future for St. Louis. Look what we're doing.
No one could pretend that public housing would solve all the problems of people inside, but at least the buildings would not mock their poverty or corrupt their hopes. In their own way, the American people built a revolution and expressed the determination that whatever its income, the next generation would not grow up in a slum.